Hello, and welcome to Talk the Block, the podcast where we discuss the top-rated HGTV show, Rock the Block. I'm Amy, and I am here with my sharp-looking co-host, Stephen. Hey, Stephen, how you doing today?
Well, I guess dressing up for this podcast paid off. Hey.
Yeah, I appreciate the extra effort you put in this week.
Yeah. I've probably shaved a couple days ago too, so it's definitely a banner day for me.
Yeah, and this is a small space, so, grooming is important.
Yeah, well, taking a shower, that once a week or whether I need it or not. So.
Okay, all right, TMI. Okay, so this week's episode, we are talking about Season 6, Episode 5 of Rock the Block, the multifunction lower level.
Yeah.
And otherwise known as a basement.
Most of the time.
But I guess basement is not a sexy enough word, so we have to call it the multifunction lower level.
Well, on the diagram that they've got for the house, they call it basement. So there you go.
Well, that was before the teams came in and did their work, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, absolutely. I'm sure when we see the whole layout next week, it'll be named something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would name it the downstairs living room kitchen with a sorted extra room. Like they all seem to kind of do the same thing in the big space and showed their creativity, if you were, in the secondary and finished space. But Stephen, why don't you walk us through the two spaces that the teams had to work on this week?
Well, actually, it was three. Three spaces. It was two rooms, but the one room was split up into a living space and a kitchen. And then, so you come down the stairs and you turn, looking at the diagram for the veterans, I think you turn right and you go into the kitchen/living space. And if you were to turn left, you go into an unfinished space. And so the competitors were supposed to transform. They didn't really have the option of doing something different. They were supposed to make a kitchen and a living space. And then, whatever they wanted to do in the unfinished space was kind of up to them. It wasn't plumbed. It wasn't, there was no electric. They had kind of a really blank slate on what they could do, and then the production teams would have to come in and get the plumbing and get the electrical and HVAC and all that kind of stuff set up for them after they figured out what they were going to do.
Yeah, and I have to say,
supposedly,
I didn't love the way they did this because you were very constricted. You had to have the kitchen in that one space, and you kind of had to have a living room kitchen area. And then the smaller space, you could kind of do whatever you wanted. But I'm just remembering a couple years ago in Colorado, they had these huge basements, or shall I say huge multifunction lower levels.
Which just rolls off the tongue.
And they could pretty much do whatever they wanted with them. And you got all kinds of crazy treatments. So one team basically built a spa. Another team had much more of a clubby vibe. Another team had sort of bunk beds, put your whole family up in the basement type of vibe. And so I just felt by having the whole basement that you could structure wherever you want, it was a little more creative. Now, we did get some creativity out of the teams this week, but it really did feel like build a really nice kitchen, living area, and then take this smaller room and be creative with it. That was how the challenge played out in my mind anyway.
Yeah, you think they could even have swapped sides. The kitchen could have been on the other side. There didn't necessarily have to be on that side of, code or restrictions or something like that. So it would be kind of a little interesting had a team been able to switch it, because then you would have walked into a living space instead of walking into the kitchen kind of thing, I guess. So just could have been a little different vibe, but that's not, the teams did not seem to have any variance on that because all of the appliances were against the same wall. So they were kind of, required for whatever reason that yeah, that's so good. I don't know that it necessarily constrained them too much. They, they talked about doing a kitchenette, or one team was going to do a kitchenette, but they did have to do a kitchen. The question is, how much space do you use for it? They all kind of seem to take up similar amounts of space for the kitchen and for the living areas. So I don't know that. I don't know that they would have been more creative, but yeah, I think to your point, I think they really kind of forced them into a particular mindset when it came to that room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But hey, let's just take it for what it was. In my mind, I thought we had 4 very different takes on what that secondary room could be like. I thought 2 of the teams did a really outstanding job with their main room and the secondary room, and 2 of the teams I thought fell flat. And it wasn't necessarily the 2 teams that I'm usually expecting to fall flat that did. So this week really shook up my sort of ranking of how each house is coming together.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting way. I have a little bit different take on that, but yeah, I guess when we get to talking about the teams, we'll investigate your new perspective. And on that, maybe we should take a break. That's a little cliffhanger there, isn't it?
I'm the hostess.
Oh, that's right.
I
Sorry.
say when we take breaks.
I'm here with my lovely assistant. Co-host.
Okay, we're taking a break. We'll be back in
shocked.
Just a minute. Welcome back to Talk the Block, and let's dive right in and see what our teams did this week. And I think I want to start with Alison and Michel, who did not have my favorite design this week. They did a very high-end kitchen in their multifunction lower level, very beautiful colors and tiles and everything, and then had a very relaxing, unified-looking living room. The judge did point out that they probably should have taken the green from the kitchen and incorporate that more into the living room, which would have been good. And all that was very nice. I really liked it. I'm not sure it was my favorite, but it was very nice. But I don't know what got into their head with that pickleball court.
I don't know. They did have some nice components. It was pistachio appliances. Pistachio appliances, and
emerald green tile.
Emerald green tile. Some was Zelliger or something, some special tile. Yeah, and then the living space looked nice, and they built some arches and had the TV in a big arch, and all of that looked very cohesive. Mostly white walls and browns. So the color pattern or palette of those 2 rooms were definitely different. I think the judge had a good comment about how they did look like they were a little disjoint. They definitely did not mesh together, which is a little weird because this team's really good about integrating spaces, and so they kind of missed the mark there. And then we went to that unfinished room, and
what got into them this week?
I don't know. Maybe they're running so short on cash that they're feeling like, all they had to do was treat the floor. Now, how they treated it to be a pickleball court, I'm not exactly sure. I think that's a very specific choice and something that I wouldn't choose. Although if it was some sort of textured floor or flooring that they put down that could be like a multi-purpose type of thing, then I would feel better about that decision, because otherwise it was just
it looked like they just painted the
and
floor.
Then they did something and then they painted it.
Okay.
So it wasn't the regular floor, because they cleaned it up and they did show that they were putting another layer down.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
Whatever it was, I don't know, but they treated the floor. And then they had the sauna and the spa, the cold plunge, which was nice, but it was very disjoint. Which again, the judge, who I'm not a fan of, but I think she was right.
Yeah,
she was right. So got to give her props for that.
Well,
and then they spent all that money on a mural. I'm sure that wasn't free. So if it was the sort of thing where they were running short on money, they could have made different choices again. I think this team is struggling with their lack of money. Speaking of money, the team that spent the most did not win this week.
Ooh,
so
okay.
That's a change
another
too,
cliffhanger. But I would say do a wellness lounge or do a pickleball game area. Choose one. Do not do a wellness lounge divided by a pickleball court. I mean, you'll be playing pickleball and your ball is going to go in that cold plunge. I mean, seriously, you can imagine.
Yeah, that's true. That's that adds a extra dimension to pickleball. And so just going to say out loud, I've never played pickleball.
But I mean, they could have put like some lounge chairs and some hooks and whatever for robes and things like that, and in between the cold plunge and the sauna, and made it like a wellness area and done some really interesting design things. Or they could have really leaned in the pickleball court and done like a soda fountain or like a locker room area or something that matched that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of like they had two ideas and they couldn't decide which one to go with, so they did both, and it just made no sense.
Yeah, this might, again, being the place where two designers that have never worked with each other before, finally, you see where they weren't able to get past the different ideas, and so they unfortunately decided to mesh them. I think going with a pickleball court was a bad idea. If they'd have leaned into that, I think it would have been an even worse idea. At least it would have been cohesive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think since they had the cold plunge and they had the sauna, going more towards that wellness. What they didn't want to do was have a gym, which, okay, you don't want a gym down there because you don't want to work out in a non area without any natural light, which is a little, I don't know, that's specific, but it's a great place, frankly, to have a workout room because, for one, being on the bottom floor, the noise from people running on a treadmill or specific reference there, or dropping weights or whatnot wouldn't propagate through the house.
Yeah.
Our gym being on the third floor, they kind of get the vibration. Amy likes to run, and she gets on the treadmill. I apparently have really good hearing, so I can the vibrations. I can hear the vibrations in the house, and so I think that I think if you're going to have a gym, the lower it is, the better as far as soundproofing.
You could have done like a yoga studio,
but
meditation
I think the wellness,
room, which wouldn't have cost that much. Done some interesting things with wood and what have you on the walls and the floor.
Yeah.
Lounge areas, maybe a water feature. I mean, heck, maybe I should be a designer, but I can picture something like that being like a wow factor, and it wouldn't have cost all that much more than the pickleball court, because I think they get the furniture for free from Wayfair. I don't think they're paying for that furniture. So
they probably have a budget.
Yeah.
Each team probably has a budget that they can use, and so again, maybe they're running out of their Wayfair budget. I think you alluded to this, in our preview show that having these two designers with very disparate ideas on how to do things, I think this is finally where we see that trip them up.
I agree with you 100%. You feel like they don't want to step on each other's toes. So Michel was not sold on the pickleball, but Alison was so pro pickleball that he couldn't tell her not to do it.
Right.
But I think maybe he wanted wellness, and they just kind of did both. And maybe even with the living room and kitchen, it's possible that one of them focused more on the living room and one focused more on the kitchen, and therefore you didn't have the unified design thread through the whole. I mean, it was unified. They used arches and they used the white oak, but I think having two primary designers might be hurting the consistency, continuity of some of these designs.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that was their biggest problem, and that was I guess just as far as keeping up with what people are spending from their winnings, their frenemy bonus of $1,500 from week 3, they finally got to spend, and that's what they spent it on, was the white oak paneling that they used in the living space. Yeah, I think we've beaten them up enough.
Yeah, and normally I love them, but they were, I don't know if they were my least favorite or not. I think my least favorite has to be my typical least favorite team, Team Painted Black, Cole and Chelsea. And I didn't see, maybe we should pause for a minute before we talk about Cole and Chelsea. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, yep, I think you're right.
Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, Team Cole and Chelsea. Their theme was that they wanted to have an adult game room and a kid game room.
A barcade.
A barcade and a kidcade, or whatever they called it, right?
Yeah, well, they did call it an arcade, because arcades are just for kids. Not. Take offense to that, like arcades.
Well, let's start with the barcade. Like, I didn't really vibe on this too much. They had was it a pool table?
They had a pool table, they had a poker table, and then they had that shuffleboard table.
Yeah, okay. The shuffleboard table has to be one of their more creative yet impractical ideas that they've shown on this show so far, in that instead of having a kitchen island, they had this shuffleboard game, one of those table shuffleboards
in the kitchen,
as where the island would be, right? So if you're cooking or having snacks out or whatever else, things are going to be put on that shuffleboard court. It's going to be really hard to not have stuff put on there, drinks spelled on there, etc. And it's just going to mess up the shuffleboard. And then it's in a place where that's natural. And if you're cooking, you have limited counter space. Not that I think you're going to do a lot of cooking in the basement, but if you wanted to, you don't have the space for that.
Well, even as you said, if you wanted to just set out some snacks, I mean, they had that little bar stool, but that's really it's kind of like the person sitting their space. You couldn't lay out a whole bunch of space and then people sitting there and eating. I think it would be a little bit problematic.
Yeah, and if you did lay out that space, I mean, the crumbs are all going to go into the shuffleboard court, which is below it. So I just felt like it wasn't all that cool, and it definitely was not very practical.
We have a foosball table that is combined. It has a cover that goes over the top of it, and we use it as a coffee table. And so when you're not using a coffee table, you'll take the cover off. It's a hardwood cover. And then there's the foosball table, which is kind of cool. And so I think if they had finished that concept of having a piece that goes over it that would bring it up to the level of the table that was with the bar stools, that would then be solid enough that you could do your prep and whatnot. I think that might have been okay, but it might have been okay. I don't think they would have executed it very well. I think it was just a bad idea. I think it had a shuffleboard table in there, but I think for some reason they just decided to go with that. And,
I think that was a swing and a miss.
Bad
I mean,
idea.
And then I didn't see anything unique. I mean, it had a wall with this paneling on it, which didn't look very cool. I mean, it didn't look very gamey. Their kitchen was nice. I did like that they used the same quartz on the counter and the backsplash all the way up to the wall. So that did give the kitchen a little bit of a wow factor.
Yeah,
so that was probably my favorite thing in that room.
Yeah, they the quartz slab looked good. They said they spent $6,000 that they had saved from doing some of the work themselves. I assume that means because they built that shuffleboard table and made a big deal of that. So assuming it's from that. The judge also commented that on the hood looked really nice. So I think the kitchen looked fine. And as far as just coming up with a game room, I thought they were successful. Pool table looked like the pool table had a decent amount of space around it. Okay, so a little bit of my nitpicks here. at times I have played competitive billiards, and I get annoyed when there's walls that are going to interfere with your ability to take a proper stance to take a shot. And I think one of the walls did kind of impede on your ability, but granted, it didn't look like it was too bad. So. But as far as executing the game room, I thought it was fine.
I don't know. I think they could have done more. They could have had like a rack with the, really cool looking rack with the pull sticks on it. They could have had.
They had that.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah. It was hard to notice because they only had 2 pool cues in it, so it was hard to tell that it was actually one of those racks that would normally have your chalk and the pool cues and the extra. The hand chalk and the chalk for the cue and hold your I
don't know. I mean,
racks.
I think it was fine as a game room, but I didn't see a lot of creativity in it other than the shuffleboard. I mean, whereas they could have done some more interesting things with that to really, pump it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think from a creativity standpoint, you're right. They did have stuff on the wall that was game-related decorations. But yeah, from just if just buying the right piece of art and throwing it up on the wall is creativity, then they achieved it. But otherwise, I don't think so.
Yeah. It didn't vibe with me. And then let's talk about the arcade. They did pick a carpet that you would have seen in an 80s or 90s arcade. And there is a reason people had that in the arcade and not in their house.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, they did point out that you don't have to worry about kids spilling stuff on it.
It does hide stains well.
It does hide stains.
Yes, it does hide stains, but it is not attractive.
Which is good and bad, right? Because if it's in your house, you might like to know that there's a stain there so you can clean it up, right? That somebody spilled something instead of this thing that's just accumulating and... then all of a sudden you take one step into the carpet and you can't move your foot anymore because it's trapped.
Well, I guess the point is, and this was a trap that I think almost every team fell into, is it was very specific. If you want an arcade room in your house and it's going to be a place where you're going to have kids hanging out, having a carpet like that is not a bad idea because you don't have to worry about it getting dirty or whatever else. But if you don't want to have an arcade room, you are stuck with this carpet that you've got to pull up, and there's no way on earth you would want that carpet if it wasn't an arcade room.
Yeah,
and then
true.
And then some of the games like that basketball game was really lame. There was no way to keep
it didn't do scoring. It was hand built, so fine, whatever it is. It's a way to just shoot basketball, but you can't really call it an arcade game because it's not keeping score.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then all the other games were all just they weren't really games. It was all fake. I guess they paid $450 for all these templates to be up there. Yeah. I think that room was a fail. I think they could have done something to be kid-ish without being so chitsy. Is chitsy the right word?
I don't know if chitsy's a word or not, but it does seem to fit there.
Yeah.
Tacky comes to mind. I don't know. I mean, it was
cowboy contemporary. Cowboys always have carpets like that in their rooms.
Oh,
that
is the funny thing. They were just whining to the high heaven about having to have a tech room in their cowboy contemporary house. And then they go and put an arcade in that has nothing cowboy contemporary. Yeah. And they could have even done some cowboy contemporary stuff in their adult game room. I mean, with the poker table and what have you. They could have had like one of those cow rugs or, know, they could have.
Didn't even have a skull on the wall.
No, there was no skull.
No skull.
What were they thinking? So I just felt like, they do like bold things, but I just kind of felt their boldness here was misplaced and their non-boldness was just kind of blah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I think we've raked them over the coals enough. Sorry to start off so negative in this podcast, but we're going to take a break and maybe come back with a little bit more of a positive attitude. What do you think, Stephen?
I'm not sure how positive it'll be, but we'll have the break.
All right. Okay, so let's talk about Jonathan and Jordan. Sorry. They really seem to have a lot of fun this week. And I personally, I'm just going to say, I thought this was my favorite space. I thought they did a great job. And I think it's because they were really tapping into who they were and their memories of being young music stars and having a green room and having a studio. So what they brought to the table really expressed their personality, their history, and it was creative, but it was very cohesive.
Yeah, they set out to make a green room and then have basically a recording studio. And I think from that standpoint, they were successful in having a losing idea. And they executed it.
A losing
they
idea
executed
really well.
Yeah, it's like in golf. You decided to do something, you hit the shot, and you realize, oh, that was the wrong thing to do.
But I executed it well.
But you executed it well. So obviously, you got to take the win that you did what you were trying to do. But I didn't. At least they didn't break into song. Which I really expected. That was one of the things I called out. At some point in time, you're going to hear them try to harmonize with each other, and they went back to when they first started doing the recording. I think they said when they recorded their first album, they would go into the recording studio and then they'd come out and they'd play ping pong. Most people call it table tennis, but ping pong too. And so they decided to build their own ping pong table. Having played competitive ping pong, I don't really know that I agree with what they built was a ping pong table. But they did build something that looked like a ping pong table, and they painted it black.
So they were sort of the team Painted Black Junior this week.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think in general they did. When they were showing the views of the kitchen, I noticed the kitchen appliances were all white, which I thought made it look like it did look. They were going to build a kitchenette, and I think the white appliances did evoke kitchenette. But I did not think that the white appliances went with everything else that they were doing. They had some sort of metal countertop, and then they had beautiful browns and stuff in there. What I think you called it out. They used the brown that caused John to throw up last week. But.
Well, let's parse this out a little bit because I think there's a lot going on here.
Right. The peanut butter and jelly sandwiches also kind of annoyed me.
That also comes into play. There was a lot going on this week. So
without crust, it looked like they trimmed the crust off their PBJs.
So they recalled relaxing in the green room, and that was their space to hang out and play ping pong or whatever. So they wanted to recreate that. And I really didn't think that their green room concept was super specific. It just seemed like a fun hangout lounge. They definitely had the smallest kitchen. They deliberately made more of a kitchenette, but then they also had a nice sized bar on the other wall. So they had sort of a bar area and a kitchen area, which I really liked that for a basement space. If you're not looking to have a mother-in-law or a separate apartment and you want to have one family living this home, you don't need two full kitchens that look like full kitchens. You need a kitchen where you can do some snacks, have some drinks, set it up, and then more of a hangout bar area. So I think not having the big island and having the bar instead was a smart decision. They had lots of cool, relaxing seating with cute little lamps and what have you, where you could hang out, play games, read books, whatever. And then they had the ping pong table. And I don't know if the ping pong table was competitively sound, but it was cool. And it did look like a space where you would want to go and just hang out and relax with your friends.
Yeah, I guess also pointing out what they spent their $3,000 of winnings on that custom wood bar, which actually did look really good.
And the walnut cabinetry, which was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. The other call out on the ping pong table is that there's really no room to move around it. If you're actually playing ping pong, you can't actually take a couple of steps back with the way it was situated. And the other problem I've got is custom. And it was just one long board, which means that if somebody wants to move it, you've got to move it as one long board. Typically your table tennis tables fold up to make them easier to get out of the way in the store. And this looked like it was none of that.
This was a permanent fixture.
Built.
It wasn't going to fold up. So that is true. Maybe less practical than a less beautiful ping pong table or whatever.
Being that it was that solid, if you needed to sit a few people around it and, to have some food or whatnot, it would definitely be solid enough for that. So that's an advantage. But I think they did a nice job with their living space. Yeah.
Well, I liked the sort of shiny cork wallpaper that they used.
Right. Yeah,
I thought that was really
on
neat.
two walls.
The tones were really nice in this room.
Yep.
I do agree with you. The white appliances would not have been my choice. They sort of stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then they got dinged for having a big wall with no art. They're always getting dinged for no art.
Yeah, that's true.
This team
Yeah,
is sort of
foyer,
the
right.
anti-art team. So, they could have put some posters or something up there to liven it up a little bit. That would have been cool,
Yeah. They, maybe even get posters of like a band. Or something. Maybe the
cool.
New Kids on the Block poster. They probably have a couple of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some of those in their basement lying around. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
And I guess I was more open to their idea of having a full music studio because of where we live. We're in Nashville, and a lot of people are either actual working musicians or people who love music and like playing around and maybe doing some of their recordings or just having a place where they can go and make music that's somewhat soundproofed and it's not annoying the whole family. So you see a ton of houses in Nashville that sell with studios.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, in Nashville, having a studio is not very niche. It's, a lot of high-end homes have them, and it's almost expected. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've talked to a number of contractors that say they spend a lot of time building those for homes that don't have them already.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Maybe that's not so much in Utah, but certainly in Nashville, that would be a plus.
Influencer capital of the world, they might want to go down there and do their podcast. I don't know.
Yeah. But I thought the studio also was very cool. It had a good vibe. I liked the colors. I thought the way they staged it with the various instruments and stuff. You could tell this was done by people who know something about music as opposed to some music rooms we've seen where the people have probably never picked up an instrument.
Right. It's a music room because we hung a guitar on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Again, so they called that tambour. Apparently, there's a sale on tambour at Wayfair. And so now Jonathan and Jordan are using tambour. Everybody's got tambour. You get tambour. You get tambour.
I was thinking about redoing our bedroom in tambour. Steve,
oh, yeah.
Suddenly
but, hey,
I have
now's
this
the time. Well, they might be,
tambour.
Wayfair may be out of tambour after this show's done airing. But yeah, they put tambour on the wall and they talked about how it was going to soundproof it. And again...
Well, that does absorb sound, though. Those types of creases and stuff do absorb sound.
Well,
so whether
diffuse.
It's soundproof or not,
diffuses. It doesn't absorb. It's not sound absorbing. Wood in and of itself is a reflective surface, and so unless they actually coated it with something that absorbs, which I don't believe they did, I think they just stagged it. The fact that there are curves will diffuse the sound, not absorb it.
Okay.
So I think that you probably would still have. It's probably still a very quiet space. They have the doors. The question I had was if you're going to put somebody in a room, it should be the drummer. Seriously. I think our nephew's house, he's a drummer, and in the room that he practices, that's not where it's the guitarists and the vocalists are somewhere else, as opposed to the vocalists having their own room. Meanwhile, the band gets to.
I couldn't tell whether you could fit a drum kit in that or not. I think it might have been
kind of
tight.
Small.
Yeah,
some of those kits are pretty elaborate, so maybe it just wasn't room. But yeah.
So anyway, that's John and Jordan.
Yep.
And so let's take a break and talk about our last house.
I think that was long enough. That
Okay.
was probably way too long.
Well, now it's time to talk about a team that is really on the rise, the Kalamas, or otherwise known as Team Aloha.
Yep.
Yeah. And so they did pretty much the same thing everybody else did. They did a big kitchen and a living room. Well, wait, Jonathan and Jordan did do a small kitchen, but they did a full-size kitchen and they did a living room.
Right.
But they put a fireplace in their living room, and I really thought
looked nice.
that was a
Yeah.
value add. And,
Yeah.
and they built their living room kitchen with the idea that it could be a mother-in-law or an AVU. So they were really looking at that as an alternative contained living space. Whereas I think at least Jonathan and Jordan and Cole and Chelsea, their space was more like a party space for the family. It really didn't feel like a place where your mother-in-law would have her living space.
Yeah.
But they did that so that it certainly could have been its own apartment or a mother-in-law. But at the same time, it was cool and someplace that you might want to come down and just hang out and plop yourself on the couch and, watch some TV or hang out with friends.
Yeah, their design aesthetic is really keeps large families in mind, and so I think that from that standpoint, that's kind of again what they had in their mind, because they have a large family, large extended family, and so I think that benefited them here. They came up with a nice space, a very cohesive space. They had they're running out of money apparently. They had $4,500 from winning last week, and they used it to reconfigure the other room, which we haven't started talking about yet. But then they ran out of money at the end, and
they did make their own island.
They made their own island, which I think they did a much better job of that than Cole and Chelsea. So that was successful use. Apparently, outside behind the rookie houses is a boneyard of materials that the teams can go out and use if they need them, if they want them, whatever. And so Cole and Chelsea and Kamohai and Tristan both went out. They showed them going out there and bringing a whole bunch of stuff in, and so they built that island from that. But then they ran out of money. And so they used the stick-on tile on the hood. And so then, and they got dinged for it, not enough.
It didn't look good, yeah.
It didn't even look like it was on there very well. I mean, when they showed the pictures of it, it looked like some of the edges were coming off. So I think they, even running out of money, they probably should have just gone and painted it. They could have put, I don't know, maybe done some wood borders on it or something, some way to dress it up instead of just doing that slap-on thing. Yeah. I did like Tristan comment that it's easily fixed, right? So you're going to make a mistake. How much does it cost to fix? Well, you got to pull that stuff down and then buy the marble or whatever material you're putting on up there. So the materials that you want to put up there may not be inexpensive, but it's inexpensive to take that stuff off.
Yeah.
So I think
easily replaced.
Easy to replace. So I think, I think if you're going to make a mistake, I think that making a mistake that doesn't cost so much to rectify is a better mistake to make. I think you ought to get points for that.
Well, yeah, and probably that's why they didn't get dinged too much for it, even though it didn't look good.
It didn't look good. Yeah, it didn't look good. There's. I would think I mentioned to you. I think I've got this right. I got an email from Hamlet Homes about coming out and touring the homes. They're having open houses, not just me.
We've been exclusively invited
along with everybody in Utah
podcast to come and take a tour of the homes.
And I think it's this weekend. And I'd be curious to see if that's still there. I really would be curious to know if that hasn't, if the Hamlet Homes didn't come in and do something to make that more attractive, because since they're selling the homes, they're going to want to, have something a little nicer to show. Maybe not. It's a feature, here's where Kamala and Tristan made their big mistake in week 5. Put a sign up, make sure everybody calls it out.
I know. I'm really curious to see if it's still there or not. So let's talk about the other part, what they did with the unfinished space, which they are the only ones who divided it into two. It was a relatively small room, but it was oddly shaped.
Yeah.
So they decided to divide it into two spaces instead of one, which maybe in retrospect is what Michel and Alison should have done, but can't go back and change that at this point. So they had a cute but rather small media room with surround sound, tiered seating.
Right.
It was set up for 4 people. You might have been able to do different seating and get 6 people in there, but you weren't going to get many more.
Yeah,
right?
that's where the big family concept kind of died. They did have rather big chairs, so I think that if you take those chairs out, you probably could get four people comfortably on each row. So maybe
especially if they were kids.
Especially kids, yeah. Kids, you probably get a lot more in there. But yeah, they did a nice job. But yeah, it's where the big family concept came to die. Mm-hmm. The other room is also small. They pointed out this was the other weeks except last week. They moved walls and they lost, and so then last week they didn't add walls and they won. So they thought maybe adding the wall would be a problem. But I think it did add purpose to those spaces. Mm-hmm. They had that big wine area,
very
wine
nice
storage.
Wine room. That was good, and it wasn't wine as decoration.
Wasn't wine as
Se.
decoration. I don't know that the room is necessarily humidity controlled or temperature controlled. It didn't look like either one of those were the case.
You could probably add that in. It was a good sized wine closet.
It was a good sized wine. Yeah, and I mean, and however tall the ceilings are in this place, the wine went all the way to the top. So, and it's not that big. I'm not exactly sure how you get a ladder in there or something in there in order to get up to the wine bottles that are at the top. I'm wondering that.
I don't know. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you saw the judge go in, and she's not a very large person, and she kind of filled up the space. And I'm like, okay, so if you want to get a bottle of wine down that's 10, 12 feet off the floor, how are you going to do that? Now, I guess just coming to mind now, we were I forget what restaurant that was that we went to, and they had that big glass wine room, and they had the angels.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Came
Could
down
you have an
on,
angel coming from the ceiling?
Coming
of the
from the
wine
ceiling
room
on a line.
Yeah, that would have been very creative.
Yeah. So they tether you and you kind of hoist yourself up. You make you work for your wine. Yeah.
You could get like a small step ladder in there, which would be enough to reach the top.
Depending
you wouldn't
on how tall
need
you
a
are.
full-blown ladder.
Depending on how tall you are. Basketball players, centers, power forwards, they're probably okay.
That I could take a step ladder.
Your Uncle Don's
not
not going up that high.
Well, Uncle Don's not going up on the step ladder, and he shouldn't go up on the step ladder. Uncle Don, if you're listening, stay off the step ladder.
Ladders.
Yeah, ladders are not your friends.
No.
So I liked it. I mean, I thought it was sort of like this private little loungy area in a wine cellar. And I was thinking about it because we are in Utah, a lot of practicing Mormons in Utah, and alcohol
like to hide their wine.
Is verboten. But yeah, you could have this hidden little room where you had wine and you had a bar, and
Yeah,
like
make
you
sure
could
the
bring
elders
all
don't
your
go
Mormon
downstairs.
friends over and keep them on the first floor, and
Yeah.
not in the private little viewing room.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's just a little theater.
Then
That's
you'd
just a
bring
little
your
theater.
Gentile friends down
right.
to the secret wine room, lounge room, and the rest of the world wouldn't. As long as you had a locked door on that, you could just say, "Oh, this is a utility closet."
Yeah, right,
and you're
yeah.
giving tours of your house. It's small enough people really wouldn't want to see it. So
Right.
maybe that was practical for the practicing Mormons who like to have a glass of wine now and again. It has some utility, right?
Yeah, you could have the coffee maker down there too.
No, I think, as far as I can tell, LDS dislikes coffee more than they dislike alcohol. I think, my experience is you have LDS who will, not the super pious ones, but many will have a drink now and then, but they think coffee is like just something that they have and maybe it's because they've never had coffee, so they've never developed a taste for it, so they just it's something they don't even want to try.
And we're making fun of these. We have some very good friends who are Mormon, and so in-laws who were raised Mormon, so we have a little bit of experience, and we're not trying to insult any of our listeners who are Mormon. We're not trying to disparage your belief system, but we do have listeners in Utah, so
no, and not in any way are we trying to disparage the belief system or make fun of people. I'm just thinking about like the potential buyers for this house, and probably you're going to have a number of potential buyers that are LDS, and how are they going to react to a wine room, right? So it's sort of like, again, if this house were in Nashville where everybody drinks all the time, of course you'd have a hidden bar, in a wine room.
It's a speakeasy.
In Utah, maybe it's sort of like if you took their basement and Jonathan and Jordan's basement, and maybe this is why they both appealed to me. They fit in perfectly with the lifestyle that we're living here in Nashville, music and booze, Music. So.
Yeah. Yeah, even the Baptist churches here serve alcohol.
Well, now, Stephen,
hey,
we don't know that. We don't know that.
Well,
we have to be...
yeah, okay, so, and they dance. So there.
Okay, so do we want to take a quick break and talk about the judging?
Yes.
Okay, so the judge was Kim Miles, somebody who was very petite but personality plus.
Yeah.
And she really reacted viscerally and emotionally to every space that she went into.
Yep.
I will say that I thought most of her critiques were spot on.
Yeah,
I mean, most of the things that she complained about were things that I agreed with.
Yep.
The things she liked tended to be things that I liked. And I think probably Tristan and Kamohai got the win because their house was more universal appealing. And I think she even said that. Who doesn't want media these days, right? So almost any family that's going to look at this house is going to say, media room, that's cool, right? Whereas some would say arcade, that's cool. And some would say, how fast can I get rid of this carpet? And some would say, oh, I love having a mini pickleball court where I can hit the ball into a cold plunge, where others would say, how fast can I paint over this and, put in yoga mats or gym equipment or whatever else they might want to do in that space. So I felt like she had a good point. Almost any family would be like, oh, a really well thought out media room with surround sound is something I want in my home.
Yeah, I think their kitchen and living space also looked very cohesive and was done very well. And the other teams kind of tripped themselves, right? So the disjoint pickleball court was and the disjoint kitchen and living space for Alison and Michel took them out of the running. Cole and Chelsea's arcade room.
And Shuffleboard Island.
Because I guess this lady considers herself to be a chef, and so called out the fact that there wasn't a lot of prep space, rightly so. I think they tripped over themselves and took themselves out of the running. And then, John and Jordan, I think probably it was just a specific. It was so specific. I think what they did, I think, was very cohesive. They got dinged for a wall with no artwork, but
that's easily rectified.
They had a plan and they executed it, and I think that again, it was just it was a plan that was not going to win, and
it would have won in Nashville.
It would have won in Nashville, and if Kamohai and Tristan hadn't done such a good job, they probably would have won.
Yeah.
So if they had tripped over themselves like the other team, then and I think they probably could have left that unfinished space as one room and come up with a cohesive concept, and they still would have won. I think having the spaces that they had were smart. But I think that they still could have executed. So unless Tristan and Kamohai made a mistake, John and Jordan were never going to win this week. So they kind of, they had a plan. They executed it. They had a good plan. They executed it well. They just ran out of money when it came time to do the hood. Got called out on it, but again, it wasn't a big enough problem to lose. So 2 weeks in a row for Team Aloha.
Yeah. And so other teams are taking notice. So where are we budget-wise, Stephen? Can you give a rundown of how much money each team has left after this week?
Yeah, well, like I said, John and Jordan used the most, but they had the most to use. So they entered the week with $100K and used 40. So John and Jordan have $60K left, which is a nice chunk of change going. Next week is backyard, right? So they got with 2 weeks left, and I know I've got it around here somewhere. What the let's see, backyard, and then it signs up the decks in large backyard. So
that's the last space,
yeah, and then
the twins are going to be the judges.
Yeah, the
next
twins
week.
are the judges next
Okay,
week. Yeah. So nobody has solar panels, so they won't like anybody's house. But so outdoor spaces next week. So John and Jordan have $60K left, and I'm not sure what they're going to do the last week. The last week just says that Jonathan Scott will be there to survey the completed homes. I guess the exteriors,
and guest rooms and
balconies.
Yeah,
so that's the last week. So they've got $60K. Alison and Michel used $30K this week. They're down to $35K.
Ooh, not much.
They're dragging the dredges of their pot of money.
Yeah.
And then Cole and Chelsea entered the week with 90, used 35, so they've got $55K left, which sounds okay. It's close. They used 5. They entered the week with 10K less than John and Jordan and used 5K less, so they're pretty close. And then Tristan and Kamohai entered the week with 75,000, used 35,000, and so they have 40 left. So we've got 35 for Alison and Michel, 40 for Tristan and Kamohai, and then 55 for Cole and Chelsea, and 60 for the old kids on the block.
Yeah, okay.
So,
well, that's a pretty big disparity, and we'll see. Because until this week, it does seem to be running the pattern that the team that spent the most money is winning.
Yeah, not this week. They were close.
Yeah.
They were close.
Yeah.
But they didn't win.
Well, then, of course, the Team Aloha did win the $3,000 for next week. So,
and in this running total of their dollar amounts, they don't include the prize money.
Okay.
So it's just the money specified as the money that's coming out of the initial budget.
Yeah, and that's a good week to do it because there's lots of things you can do in an outside space. So.
Yeah, they get 3, and then Cole and Chelsea will get the $1,500.
Okay.
So we'll see what. We'll see. Maybe there'll be another dog bath. I don't know. It looks like it's the prelims. I'm not sure how they're going to do these exteriors, but it looks like most of the teams are bringing structures in.
It looks like there's a lot of proliferation of small structures outside.
Yeah.
So we'll see whether that turns out to be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, next week.
Yeah. I am anticipating it's bad for some and good for others.
Gee, Stephen.
I could feel it.
Wow. Okay. You are a procrastinator, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's me.
Well, hey, it's been great talking with you all again this week. Great talking with you, Stephen, as always.
Yeah.
I guess
I enjoy talking to myself.
Forgetting to say that we are not in any way associated with HGTV. We are not contractors. We are not designers. We are just two people who enjoy talking about other people's designs. And we are happy to be here again next week to talk to you about the backyard designs. So until next week, this is Stephen and Amy for Talk the Block, signing off.